So tonight was definitely the most controversial show of AEW, and outside of like Wembley or whatever, just like the controversial thing being them showing the CM Punk footage. And I did a video about that. So, there are some things that I'm going to touch on about, but I do think that the important thing to say is that when you look at this show, that there really was nothing really special that happened, and they have Battle of the Belts this weekend. So, obviously, no matches announced or anybody like really talking about that. They alluded to Super Card of Honor a little bit, but there was really no like, okay, well, a few wrestlers had really great matches. Let's incorporate them at Battle of the Belts. Let's incorporate them at Dynasty. So that's really not that good. I really think that I think there's like 6 or 7 matches announced for Dynasty, so they're probably going to do something where they're going to throw in 5 or 6 more matches on the card with no build when that's what they should be doing really. So the other thing about this show was that it started with Dustin Rhodes and Samoa Joe, and I was thinking to myself, oh man, they're gonna do something like they're gonna have the Young Bucks main event with the CM Punk footage. It's really just saying that that's more important than the title. The main event is the draw of the show. So what happens is that Joe goes down to the ring. Swerve attacks Joe from behind. Swerve spears Joe through a table, and that was a bad look too because obviously it takes one table spot to knock out Samoa Joe. You would have to do a little bit more if you really want Samoa Joe to go down really because he's kind of been built as a badass, but one table spot shouldn't be the thing that takes him out really. It just didn't look. It made him look weak. And I'm also happy that they had this as the beginning because usually with AEW they have like 30-minute matches in the beginning. So obviously obviously when you have this being like a swerve of a match, that's actually good because you can't always start shows the same way. So this was kind of a good, doing something a little bit different. And then the actual first match of the show was Penta El Zero Miedo versus Adam Copeland. Obviously you want to start with if you're going to start with a match, you want to start with a match that's strong. But I was also saying that we always it was very predictable because Penta is like in the Takeshita role where he's gonna lose all the matches that he's supposed to lose and he's gonna win all the matches that he's supposed to win. But more so, he's kind of like a trooper where, more than likely than not, he's gonna lose when it really matters. So it's unfortunate that he lost and they really had no plan for him. He's just there to be there. Penta does a top rope foot stomp, and he wants to get a quick win. Penta dominates most of the match. More than likely, I was saying at the beginning of the match, it seems like one of these matches where it's like Penta's going to have 90% of the offense, which he did. And then at the very end, Adam Copeland's going to have a turnaround. And I was like saying that if you want to do, I think a 50-50 match would have been better. And what would have happened? They said something like, "Okay, well, Penta's also you're having a match between two multi-time world champions." That would actually kind of make it a little bit more interesting and more compelling than just okay, 90% of the match, Penta is actually beating up Adam Copeland, and at the very end, Adam Copeland actually gets the edge. Penta is doing dives and holds over 90% of the match. They also show a countdown to the Young Bucks showing the footage. So it's like saying too, okay, this is bad as well because you're saying, okay, now it's so important that we're putting a countdown in the middle of this match. And this match was very monotonous. It was a lot of Penta offense. So I said to myself, it's almost like a countdown to this match being over. I was like saying, okay, they talk about the first match being like 20 or 30 minutes usually. So maybe I had to sit through this for another 18 minutes. It was not a good. It was not good. And I really like how Adam Copeland did a power slam on the ring apron. And I was thinking to myself, imagine if Adam Copeland, was in a feud. Like one thing they could have done with Adam Copeland is that they're having an NJPW show in Chicago. What would happen if they had Adam Copeland go to Chicago and feud with Jungle Boy and be like, okay, then if I'm champion at the time, at the time of Forbidden Door, it's gonna be you and me. That would be a really interesting dynamic. That would be actually kind of a great usage. Um, I really liked Penta using the code red. Adam Copeland responds with a spear. and then he wins the match. Brody King and Julia Hart attack Edge. Willow saves Edge, and later on they announce it's actually going to be Willow Nightingale and Edge versus Brody King and Brody King and Julia Hart, and that's gonna be a really awesome match. I like how they led to something, and you would never expect this in a million years. So I'm happy that they set up a match that I'd be very interested in seeing. Um, and also another thing too was that I really didn't like their cinematography tonight. Like they kept kind of showing on the ceiling lights, like, and the reason why AEW does that is because they have a low attendance. They're almost like, you know what, we want to show the ceiling lights instead of actually the crowd. Do a zoom in on the crowd or a group of people when you need to do that. And then the next thing they did was they had the backstage segment with they had the backstage segment where they announced that Willow and Edge are going to have a match. And then they did the Young Bucks footage. So I liked that the Young Bucks and I like that with between the Young Bucks and FTR, they're actually talking about, their biggest thing is like who's going to have like the record for the most title reigns, and also what they both represent really. And I like that there's a heel and babyface dynamic because AEW is not really good with that. And I was saying to myself is that I want the Young Bucks to win in the sense that they would make better heels. It would help. It would take them to a new level of heel if they actually win. So I think that that's the best thing for business. And if you want to kind of make your factions mean something, you're gonna have Okada with the title, then you're gonna have the Young Bucks with the title. So I think that the Bucks should definitely win this. It would really, really work. It would really do a lot more for the Young Bucks to win this instead of FTR. What would happen if you had the Infantry versus the Young Bucks down the line, like the new future of AEW versus like, the petty veterans. So I think that would be kind of a good thing, So I do hope that the Young Bucks win this. It makes storyline sense. It makes better for them to win it. And then you kind of could do something with like a wrestler like the Infantry or another team where it's like, they overcome the odds of the Young Bucks. I also had some... And, I had a lot of excitement and, like, some anxiety because I was saying, like, please, for the love of God, I hope they're not trolling because that does happen sometimes, too, with AEW because they do a lot of comedy. Maybe they're going to swerve people and not actually show the footage. So I was worried that they're going to troll. And I was saying that the reason why I don't want them to troll is because, obviously, they'll lose a lot of viewership. They'll be like, okay, now you just swerved us. Oh, well, people want to see this. Oh, well... And you advertise this, oh, well, we're going to swerve you. That does happen, and that's never a good thing. So I just am happy that they didn't let swerve. When they showed the footage, they provided context about, and talked about their feelings a bit, and just saying, like, how, the reason why FTR won that match at Wembley Stadium was because they were mentally distracted from what CM Punk did. And they are also, like, creating a bunch of suspense, really. So I do appreciate that. And I also am happy that they did show... I'm happy... I'm not... Showing the footage was counterproductive. But I'm happy that they showed the footage and it wasn't a swerve, type of thing, really. So I'm happy that it wasn't a swerve. That's what I'm trying to say. They mentioned that... And also, too, like, the other concerning thing was when they were talking about it, they really put over Jungle Boy. They kind of made it look like, CM Punk was doing, like, a high school scrap type of thing, really, So it was kind of like, as what CM Punk said, it really comes off as people shaming him and also Tony Khan not having good leadership or trusting bad judgment of other people, like the Young Bucks. And... they showed the footage, and it really, to me, when I saw it, it really looked like, CM Punk was heated. He pushed Jack Perry, and then they had to be separated. So, it was, very upsetting, and it made me sick to my stomach. I actually just felt very queasy because I was like, it's just felt like a hit in the gut, really. And then what happened was it actually hurt my enjoyment of the show, really. I actually was talking about it online. I did a video about it. So, and a lot of people were actually doing that, really, where they kind of said, okay, instead of watching the rest of AEW, people stopped watching just to talk about this. So it did kind of hurt the ratings of the show because what also matters is people watching from beginning to end. But this took away from that. And then also the other thing that I'll say is that there are people like me who actually came back and watched it because I do want to give you guys a review, you know. So, but it did kind of it did kind of do damage. FTR comes out and and they're saying, why are you showing this? You know, you guys are making an excuse that you lost at Wembley. We are ready to move on. The excuse of this footage is to show that that the Young Bucks are mad that they lost at Wembley. We have to go and beat these petty little bitches. The footage, the footage had me really hooked to the segment. The CM Punk footage had me hooked to watching this segment. FTR and EVP. FTR mentioned that the EVPs care about themselves. FTR represents the future and doing this match and wanting to win because they care about the fans, the wrestlers, and future wrestlers. And they really kind of paid the Young Bucks as people who really just care about the excuses, past issues, and entitlement. So I like how they kind of established, you know, two sides. They established heel and babyface. They established that FTR represents, you know, people who want to move forward, and the Young Bucks represent the entitlement and the problems in AEW. So that's kind of good that they kind of gave them purposes. But I also really appreciate that now you're seeing heel versus babyface, and then all this footage did and them tying it in, it really helped really sell this match. And I really want to see the match, you know, and it really sold it. But honestly, as I've said, that, you know, more than likely, this is very similar to when they put Dixie Carter through the table at TNA Wrestling. Yes, you boosted, you did boost the ratings for that segment, but then afterwards, it's like, you know, what comes next, really. And then, unfortunately, there was Hook, Jericho, Shibata, Shane Taylor productions. I didn't watch this match because I was busy talking about the footage. And also, too, they had Mariah May and Tony. They had Mariah May have a match. I wasn't really into that. And then they had Okada versus a jobber. And I saw a part of that, too. So I like how Okada was nonchalant. It was a really good, you know, type of... It was a good jobber match, and I liked how Okada really showed that, okay, this guy is not worth my time, really. So it was a good showing of him. I'm also happy that Pac came down because, you know, I actually forgot that they had a match, really, because there's not been a lot of tension on Okada and Pac really building a feud, really. So I like how Okada called out Pac, and the Young Bucks came down. So you saw another, like, scrap between FTR, the EVPs, Pac, and Okada. And that's also a little concerning because this is like the second time they did that tonight. So you're seeing the House of Black, Edge, and Willow, you know, two stories, you know, two stories and two stories in conflict. You're seeing, like, how should I kind of say this? People involved in two separate stories. Fighting with each other, so that does create a cluster mess, and now you're seeing that again with all this. But it does make sense because obviously Okada and the EVPs are in the same faction, so it does make sense. But it's also a bit of a mess, really, you know. So, and then the last match was Dustin Rhodes versus Samoa Joe. I really like this because I'm a fan of Dustin Rhodes. There's a lot of outside the ring action in the beginning for a couple of minutes, so it's obviously what we see with AEW, like way too much. Just okay, there's either like table spots or people outside the ring for a couple of minutes in a match that's not a false count anywhere. So it hurts the realism. The other thing is that it did make sense because Samoa Joe was obviously angry about what happened. Joe roughs up Dustin, and Dustin is bleeding a lot, and then also Samoa Joe comes down with a chain. So I'm thinking to myself, maybe they're foreshadowing a hardcore match or something like that. Dustin bleeds a lot, and Joe does a bunch of sentons onto him. I really like Dustin Rhodes doing a tribute to Dusty, and he also did a sunset. He also did the Code Red, which is the Sunset Power Bomb, and you know it's really awesome seeing him do that. Samoa Joe hits Dustin with the title, and then he and Swerve had a brawl after this happens, really. And I felt that was kind of bad, really, because this is kind of like the other issue that really who's supposed to be the heel and who's supposed to be the baby face, because it's really just a heel that people like, Swerve, versus a heel people want to see lose in Samoa Joe, really. So there's really no there's really no like good guy versus bad guy. It's definitely a cluster mess. So overall, I would say that if I was to grade the show, I would have to give it a D minus, because you didn't build to suit. You did not build to Battle of the Belts. You did not add matches to Dynasty. You had a segment that really put over a wrestler from another company, and even though it did push the ratings a little bit, it took a lot of people out of the show out of your show, really. And there are people who actually didn't come back and watch because either they were offended, or they said, okay, this validates the shaming of CM Punk, or people just wanted to talk about it because obviously talking about it is does more than watching the show, really. So I do think that there's a lot of like growing points. I think that as I said, you just had Supercard of Honor. What would happen if you had Dalton Castle be interviewed? What would happen if you had him challenge somebody for a match? What about, Athena, and her title reign, and she's saying, okay, at Battle of the Belts, I'm going to put it on the line, maybe against Queen Aminata or something like that, really. What about advertising Battle of the Belts and making that a show that people want to see on the weekend, to make sure you guys sell out in Kentucky Heights? What about like more matches to Dynasty, because they have like 6 or 7 matches. We know what Tony Khan does. He's gonna throw in 5 matches without any thought, really. Or you can do my suggestion of, okay, make Bryan Danielson versus Will Ospreay a 1-hour match to kind of have that, and then also make Joe and Swerve a St. Louis death match and make that a 30-minute match. So it was definitely a very counterproductive show.